Hey everybody, so we are back, Squat Success Podcast, and really, really excited today to introduce Deji. So Deji is somebody who I've known for a very, very, very long time. Actually lived together at university, probably around about 12, 13 years ago, something like that, for a year.
Absolutely, yeah.
Graduated in the same year at university, and we've been really, really, really good friends ever since. And Deji was one of the first people who came on board with Squat Success and the first cohort. So Deji didn't actually open his own practice as a squat, but he was buying the practice. And I'll just let Deji give an intro as to who he is and what he does.
Thank you very much, Bobby. So as Bobby said, my name is Deji. I was an associate, still kind of an associate, mainly focused on implants and oral surgery. But I felt the need to sort of go to the next stage, which was practice ownership. So it's been approximately just under a year where Um, myself and a friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, bought an existing practice, which was a failing practice. So we bought the existing practice, kept the patients on, kept the team on, and we've managed to turn things around with the help of Bubby and various other friends. Um, so it's that's who I am in a nutshell.
Brilliant, thanks, Deji. So, with a little bit more background, Deji. So, you've got a little bit of a niche in dentistry. So, what is that?
So my niche in dentistry is really implants and oral surgery. In addition to that, I mentor others in implants and oral surgery. And in addition to that, I also do sort of like not just basic implants. I do, simple cases right to complex cases, sometimes with my mentor. So although I mentor others, I also have a mentor for myself as well.
Yeah, that's super important, no matter what, whether it's clinical, non-clinical. You can only go so far as you know, but other people know better than what you do to get to the next level, don't they?
Absolutely.
And then my biggest question for you, Deji, really is when you're an implant dentist and you're doing
Yeah.
really well and you're, putting in implants left, right, center, and you're mentoring other people and you've got a really, really successful implant career, and I know you're heavily involved with the ADI as well. Why would you want to open your own practice or go into practice ownership? What was that within you that wanted to do that?
I'm a lunatic. No, I kid. I kid. I think there's something to be said for ownership. Um, whilst, I enjoyed working with others, to, provide the service, I kind of wanted to have control over the patients I saw, much bigger control over the patients I saw. In addition to that, I wanted to see whether I could open a practice or own a practice. I wanted to know what, in terms of the difficulty, I wanted to know what that was like. I wanted to see what the challenges were going to be. And ultimately, also, I kind of wanted to, I thought it would be a fun thing to do. I wanted to see how I could challenge myself. I know
Yeah,
from,
no, it's really good that you say that because often people think that they go into it thinking that it's going to be really hard, really difficult, but they often forget the fun aspect, like the
yeah,
enjoyable bits, and the
yeah.
fact that it can be hugely fun, like hugely. It just depends on how you frame your challenges and everything that you're going through. But on the other aspect, or one aspect, it's hard, but the other aspect is it enjoyable? And it can be depending on how you view it and what kind of person you are. So it's not for everybody, obviously, but the ones who enjoy it are obviously the ones who are going to succeed more with it once they're in it.
I think I mean I completely agree with you, and it's all about mindset. I know within dentistry we talk about mindset all the time, more so recently than you know, before, when we first graduated, the concept of mindset wasn't really discussed. Um, but I think in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, it's something which everybody's talking about. Um, I think, you know, you do need to have the right mindset. You need to understand why you're doing it. So, Simon Sinek talks about find your why, or figure out your why. Yes, you can do clinical dentistry, and I'm still an associate, and I still enjoyed that aspect in other practices. Um, but reflecting back and looking at the changes myself and Emma Grant, who's my business partner, have made, and to see the growth in the team, I mean, that's a feeling I just can't put into words. It's incredible.
So when you were looking back, Deji, so obviously you were an implant dentist, you decided, look, I want to go into practice ownership no matter what. I've got my implant thing on the side, and but this is something I really want to do. We kind of understand now why you wanted to do that. When you made that decision, did it come up whether to set up a squat or was it just, I'd rather buy an existing practice? And what was your decision process around that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a question of whether to go down the squat route or whether to buy an existing practice. And when I did the numbers, most existing practices cost a heck of a lot of money to buy into. A heck obscene amount. And Bobby, like there's all the hidden fees as well, which aren't really discussed. Um, but luckily for with myself, it was just an incredible opportunity which I couldn't pass off. I one of the things about being who I am is I'm quite an approachable person and I make friends very easily with various different people. So, one of the um, reps, I guess, from Wesleyan, who I'm really close to, saw that there was an opportunity, and he picked up the phone and called me, and that was it. So it was, like I always say that things happen for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And I think, had I maybe not waited for that opportunity and forced things, um, I would have passed off on the opportunity that came. Failing that, I was going to go and try and open up a squat, buy a building, do it up, you know, um, and invest the capital that was needed. But unfortunately, I just got lucky.
So the plan was essentially, I'm gonna set up a squat, but
Yeah.
this other opportunity came to me and it was too good to miss. So it was like, forget the squat, I'm gonna go down this route instead.
Exactly. I still do what because I've seen what you do, Bobs, and I've seen some of the guys who set up squats after, being on your program. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I'm getting that itch. I'm like, now that we're doing reasonably okay with the existing practice, I'm like, what's the next challenge? You know? So
So if we rewind just a little bit, when Wesleyan approached you with the opportunity, what was it that made that opportunity appeal to you so much that made you change your mind from setting up a squat to buying that existing practice? And the reason why is I ask this is because I say to everybody, even the people who want to open squats, people who want to buy practices, there is no right or wrong. There's such a huge crossover, and different opportunities will come to different people at different times. Some will suit other personality types better than others, depending on your experience. And there is no one size fits all. So, it's really important to understand that, a squat isn't for everyone, buying a practice isn't for everyone. But there's pros and cons, but it's understanding how do you go through that decision process to make the best decision for you as an individual.
I think, you have to be brutally honest with yourself, right? Who are you? I'm somebody who enjoys working with people. I've always said from day one that I do not want to own a practice by myself. I know this was a conversation you and I kept having back and forth. Um, and I had been incredibly lucky to have Emma as a friend. Okay, so that was a positive. So I knew that regardless of what way or what direction I went down, I was going to be doing it with somebody. And that has several advantages. So one of the main advantage is the fact that you can spread the workload. The other advantage is that you can spread the risk. Okay. So from a business point of view, it just made sense for me to partner up for me personally, which then tied into my personality as well. Then there's the aspects of the fact that there was already an established patient list, um, where, like the patients had a great deal of loyalty to the practice. And so when I was doing the research on the practice, I saw their Google reviews and they were all very positive. And also a lot of the patients were long-standing patients as well, for this particular practice. We're talking 20, 30 years plus, right? So versus for me, um, trying to get new patients into the practice, and also the marketing budget that will be required in order to do that. So I knew off the bat, um, I already had a stable list, okay? And then also my financial situation at the time, um, didn't lend itself well to opening up a squat, and that's me being brutally honest. So for me, it was just a no-brainer. It just made sense for me at the time.
Yeah, no, brilliant. No, that all makes sense. And it gives everybody a little bit of an insight, when you're making that decision process, is, which route to go down. So if you're happy, are you happy to talk a little bit about the numbers? Not in
Yeah,
depth, but just a little bit. So,
sure.
say for example, setting up a squat and buying a practice. Obviously, we're talking about buying practices. A lot of them are very, very expensive and
Mhm.
often out of the reach of a lot of associate dentists. So, with this particular practice, how much did you buy it for? What was it turning over when you bought it?
So with this particular practice, we bought the building. That's the other thing I forgot to say. I wanted freehold. For me, after listening to Bobby and a few of my other long-standing friends from certain communities, I understood the power of freeholds. So for me, I had to be a freehold, and that was on offer, so it made sense. So for the freehold, we bought it for 250,000. And then for the business, we bought it for 50,000.
Yeah.
So
So 50,000 is very, very, very low figure. When people
very low
talk
figure.
about buying practices, it's almost unheard of to be able to buy a practice for £50,000. So the practice as it was when you bought it, what was it turning over? What was the profit like, at that
So
price?
so turnover at the time we bought it was on average about 167,
Yeah.
which is very, very low for a two-surgery practice. Profit was, gosh, it was about 12,000. And that was the risk. The risk for us was, okay, if the profit is 12,000 before one has taken an income from the practice, that's not really enough to um, an income for that individual. So how do we mitigate against that? And so that was the challenge for myself and Emma at the time.
And how did you try to mitigate that? What was your thought process?
So our thought process was, first of all, the fees had to go up. Patients are going to hate it. They're going to hate us. They're going to think we're greedy dentists.
Let me just interrupt there really quickly. Did they when you did that?
So there was a few that grumbled,
Yeah.
but actually, and the ones that wanted to leave left.
Okay.
But actually, it kind of it kind of allowed us to concentrate on the ones that wanted to be part of our journey and wanted to have an improvement in the service which they received. Because what you need to understand is Emma works for the GDC, and so there's a certain standard that needed to be there. And I'm an implant dentist, and I have a certain standard by which I operate under. So the only way we were going to improve the standard was by increasing the fees. It was a non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. I mean, fee setting is a controversial topic no matter what. And most practice owners are very, very reluctant to up their fees. And it's something that we do actually really regularly, probably more so than most general practices. But it's super important because the way the economy is and the way things are going, ultimately you've just got to become better at being able to sell what you do to your
Yeah,
patients and also find the ideal patients who want the type of work that you're providing within your practice.
yeah.
There's plenty of them out there, but you have to understand your business model, what you want to achieve, and how that's going to work.
Also, I think there's an element of understanding what your value is.
Yeah.
I think as
I,
dentists,
I,
we
I see
often,
this a lot,
yeah,
especially I speak to so many dentists, and so many of them have been, on so many different training courses, have a certain skill set, and still undervalue themselves,
yeah,
and still feel that they're not worthy of being able to charge the fees that they need to be charging,
yeah,
not should be charging, need to be charging.
yeah. Because
And that again comes down to mindset.
yeah, exactly. I think, Bobby, you know me. I was a course junkie. I was going on this course, that course, and it's because I joke and say I was a course junkie, but it's because I knew the level which I was trying to operate at, and I knew that I needed help. So yes, I attended the necessary courses in order to improve as an implant dentist, but I also had mentorship to support that. So so from there, I knew the value which I was going to be offering our patients. So, you know, the only way to ensure that we are able to execute that value was to increase the fees. Otherwise we'll be in a worse position um, than the previous practice owner had actually left the practice.
Yeah, no, no,
She
100%.
she did a fantastic job keeping those patients going. It was not to devalue what she's done, but times have changed. And there was, the new technology came out and new guidance came out, and we had to comply to those guidelines.
Yeah, no, no, I agree completely. And then, Deji, when you were taking over the practice, so, all right, fair enough, you went through the process, you decided you're going to buy the practice. You
Mhm.
knew there was a lot of problems within the practice, and you know you've got to make this practice work, and you
Mm.
know you've got to get those figures up. What was the strategy behind that? So when you sat down with them and thinking, okay, how do we turn this around? We've got a practice, it's got some patients, we know it's run down, we've got two surgeries, we know there's some potential there.
Yeah,
How do we actually start to put this together into the right puzzle pieces and fit it all to make sure that we can sustain this and grow this and make it work financially?
you need to know your numbers. It's that simple. You need to know your numbers. You need to know what the each surgery is operating at per hour. You need to know what your costs are. I mean, Bobby, you and I constantly, I was like, Bobby, I don't understand this. How do I work out what the hourly rate of the surgery should be? Right? You need to know what your costs are, right? So that's off the bat, that's the first starting point. You then need to know and understand where the deficit is in terms of maximizing your practice. So, in this situation, it's a two surgery practice, but she was only operating from one surgery. And even then, she wasn't really open 5 days a week. So there was a huge potential there to increase accessibility for patients and also from a, utilizing both surgery point of view and also from increasing the number of days which, you provided a service. And then the second thing was from us. from our perspective, we need both surgeries to be operational at all times. Now, I have other jobs elsewhere, so I didn't rely on the income um from the practice. And likewise with Emma. And that was a discussion which we had very early on in our partnership. How much money do we need in order to basically survive in terms of our personal life to determine that we don't need an income from the practice. Um, and then it's just a case of so once we figured that out, it was a case of okay, well, there's no hygienist in the practice. So, so we needed to get a hygienist in straight away because that's already telling patients that we are here to improve the service for them. So it's sending a very strong signal. And so we were able to work hand in hand with our hygienist. Also, it was important for both Em and I to basically do alternative days so that we can continue to work in other practices in order to have our income. So hygienist working from one surgery, and there's always a dentist in the other surgery. And then as the months progressed, we realized that actually a lot of the endo that were being done in the practice, um, they 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 could be improved. So by the time we, started taking regular X-rays as per guidelines, we realized that actually this is a problem. And the last, I do implants. The last endo I did was over 10 years ago. So I wasn't going to be doing that by myself. So I I knew somebody who was doing an endo course, MSc, and I, explained the situation to her, and I was quite frank with her in terms of, what she's going to come into. And, she was gracious enough to help us out, and she's still with us today. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
I'll say,
it's like,
yeah, so I mean, looking at it, I think the overall strategy essentially was you're looking at all the gaps and
mm,
everything that wasn't there, and then how do we build that on top of what's existing?
yeah, exactly.
And
And also
what,
like, tapping
yeah,
into your network that already exists. So
yeah,
understanding who are my friends, right? What skills do they have? Can I have a frank conversation with them? Would they be willing to come and help me?
yeah, it's fantastic. That's the importance of having such a big network and a community and friends who do all sorts of different types of work. It's one of the most common things that I say. Most of the people that you need in your life, whenever you have problems, are in your phone book.
Yes.
You just don't know who they are or haven't reached out to them. But I can
Absolutely.
guarantee they're probably there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And then, what was when you first originally took over the practice, though, what was your biggest fear? What was the biggest thing that you were thinking, oh, okay, we've completed now, and I'm really scared about this. What was
Three
that?
things. Three
Because
things.
the reason why I ask this question is because there's so many dentists that go down the same journey and are really, really scared. So a lot of them are scared right before they start the process. And
Mm.
then obviously you get through that process and then you start to get a little bit cold feet right when you're about to take over the practice because you're going to have imposter syndrome and all sorts of other emotional feelings that are going through you. And, what was that? And then how did you manage that?
So three things. The first thing was staff. Staff were going to leave,
Yeah.
right? And would we be able to recruit? We did have one staff member leave, and um, and it was because she basically wasn't she basically wasn't doing what she needed to do. And because we've now come in and said, actually, that's not acceptable,
Yeah.
right? And she didn't have that kind of growth mindset. So sometimes you can't take everybody with you.
Oh, 100%, I agree.
You know?
Yeah, it's one of those things, when you're building a practice, your team is invaluable. And if they're not
Absolutely.
on, if they're not in the right mindset, or you can't put them in the right mindset or get them on board, they can't be within your practice. It's as
Yeah,
simple as that because they will
ab-
bring everybody else down with
absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. And the way we counteracted, the staffing issue was to be quite frank with our staff members from day dot, you know, uh, for them to understand that, actually we do see them as human beings rather than just numbers. And we are doing this in order that we can all win together and share that vision with them
Yeah.
and be honest with them and say, we want you to be part of the journey. But if you don't want to be part of the journey, that's okay as well. There will be, you can take opportunities elsewhere. And it's about,
What kind of things did you do with the team to kind of get that across? And when you first took over, because obviously that's a big fear for a lot of people. The team are going to
yeah.
leave, or they're not going to get on with us, or whatever it is. So, what kind of things did you do within the practice when you took over to help mitigate that and kind of get them on board? It'd be really useful for other people listening to understand, what are kind of things that you can do, when you're going through the same process.
So the first thing we did was just before we were about to complete, we met the team, both Em and I. We met them at lunchtime. We brought some snacks, etc. And the exiting practice owner was gracious enough to introduce us. And we began to understand the mindset that existed. So one of the comments we received was, "Oh no, patients aren't going to be interested in implants. They're not going to be interested in cosmetic stuff. They're not going to be interested in this, that, etc., etc., etc." And we didn't rebut them. We just said, "Okay, why do you think that?" You know? And they gave their reasons. Oh, because they've been coming for so many years. We've never done it before, etc. We said, "Okay, how about you know how about trying to come on this journey with us and seeing how you can help us achieve this vision?" So that's the first thing. Then second thing was, you know, the person who had the strongest relationship with patients, we left her exactly where she enjoyed being, which was at reception desk, etc. So there was no real change in what she was doing previously. And I think for a lot of staff members, they are very fearful that there's going to be a huge change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so it's little changes over a long period of time, you know,
Yeah.
and they can start to see why those changes are necessary. And you start to ask them for ideas. You start to give them the responsibility of implementing certain things. So those are the sorts of things we did with them, and we had regular meetings. Okay, what are your challenges? What can we do to help?
Um, Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember talking about this with you a lot when you first took over. And I remember having those conversations. And a lot of the things we discussed was, number one was about that importance of, the fear of change amongst them. And the first thing really was, just identifying who are these people within the practice. What are their skill sets? What do they do? How do they interact with our patients? What are their beliefs? What are their belief systems? And then once you can understand that, without implementing any change initially, then you can start to work out exactly, okay, who's going to be good at what can we do going forwards, and then also how do we communicate better with them to get them on board to get to where we need to get to without having to fire them or do anything, drastic. And some of them will come on board, some of them won't. But that going through that process is super, super important. But just starting slow. And the biggest thing, that we discussed was, when you're taking over an existing practice, it's just the ability to actually understand what's happening in that practice. Because you've never worked there. You don't know. You don't know the patients, you don't know the team, you don't know the conversations that are happening. And there's no point making any changes unless you know what's going on in the first place and understand what needs changing.
you need to understand the DNA and the culture of the practice when you first take over, and
Well, I
that
love
takes
that way that you just said their culture, because that's a big, big thing that's not discussed about enough.
yeah.
Um, you know, what's your definition of culture? What would you say? What do you think?
So for me, like culture are the norms and values which exist in the practice, right? Which then informs your processes and your actions. So it's the belief systems which you hold.
Yeah.
So
Not
for
you,
for
but the
example,
whole team.
yeah, the whole team, yeah, exactly. And that's it's a top-down approach. So if they if the staff don't think that the principal cares, they're also not going to care. Why would they?
Yeah.
If they don't think that the principal has high standard, they're also not going to have a high standard. At the end of the day, like for a lot of people, it's just a job.
Yeah.
They come to get paid. Like, let's call it what it is. They come to get paid. It's just a job. But so you can't, a lot of people would try to say, um, we're going to go in and we're going to increase their wages. For me personally, I think that's the absolutely wrong thing to do because you then start to incentivize them with money rather than incentivizing them with the vision. So for us, we'll ask, oh, are you going to give us a pay rise? We're like, absolutely not. We don't, we don't have the money there. You know, I'm not saying it's not going to happen eventually, but let's see how the first 6 months go first. Let's see, and then we set a target. If we have a turnover of X, and we can then look at bonus or increase in wages.
I,
So
I couldn't agree more. Exactly what you said. Your definition of a business culture, it's just so important. And for a squat, it's a little bit different because we get to choose who we bring in. But even that is very easy to make the wrong decisions, and you only find out once they're working. And it takes a little bit of time to get to that point where you've got that team that buy into that vision. I still remember a really funny story. One of the very first times, we were short-staffed. And I was like, that's fine, don't worry. I'm going to jump on reception. And my therapist was in for the day. And the girls were looking at me like, you what? What? And I'm like, yeah, don't worry, it's fine.
yeah,
I'm going to do reception. And I was sat there answering the phones, booking patients,
yeah.
and doing everything. And they're all like, we've never worked in a practice where this happens before. What's going on?
Mate, listen, I have cleaned toilets with the girls. I have when the whole plumbing system. That's the biggest one of the biggest challenge, right? Everything's old in an existing practice. So we actually had a situation where there was no drainage,
Okay.
and it's because we got a plumber in, and I was shoveling shit, okay, with the plumber. Okay, but the important thing is I didn't ask the girls to do that. I did that with the plumber. And
Yeah.
so they saw that and they saw that, like the principal is ready to do all the crappy jobs as well.
Yeah.
So it acts to solidify the dynamic of
Yeah.
the team.
These little things, I'm such a strong believer that these little things go such a big way.
Yeah.
In our profession, there's historically, I think there's been such a huge divide between principals and dentists in general holding themselves in such high esteem that, we're not going to do this or that because that's not what I do. And that's what I pay them to do. But if you really want to build a successful business, it's actually the opposite. Everything that we do is actually for them.
Yeah.
The first
Right.
thing I say to the girls, the money that we make in the practice, the first bit of money that we make is so I can pay you.
Yeah.
Anything else is just a bonus. But everything I do is to provide the environment for the team that we have to do the work that we do. And
Yeah.
that's number one. And then anything else then is built upon that.
Absolutely. I have those conversations with girls all the time because sometimes they might
Well, we
have to
should
add.
say guys as well, just because there are some male nurses and male team members.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
in our
Girls
practice,
and
there's
guys.
predominantly women.
We have the conversation all the time because in some of the culture in some practices could be, oh, we just come to work, get paid, regardless of whether the practice makes any income or not. And I literally say to them, if we don't make any income, eventually no one will have a job. I'm that factual.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah,
it's
no,
your
I have the same conversations, in the case of literally, and
yeah,
it's the same conversation where somebody says, I want a pay rise. Well, it's okay, we'll justify it then. So,
yeah,
I'm open and transparent. This is what the business makes. And, if I'm going to pay you some more money, then, justify it and show me what I'm going to get back for that. And if
yeah,
you can show me that, then okay, it's a conversation. If you can't show
absolutely.
me that, you just want it for the sake of it, then no.
Mhm.
But I think
Yeah.
the team know well enough not to do that anymore. To say it for the sake of it because they know me well enough that they expect a reasoning behind it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Minutes, Dej, just a couple of things. So, I won't touch too much on the partnership aspect because obviously Emma's not here to give her point of view. That wouldn't be 100% fair. But since you took over, so it's been coming up to a year now, did you say? Or is it been
Yes,
over a year?
correct.
Yeah. And how things gone then? So financially, team-wise, practice, kind of where you began. Just give us a run through where it started and where you're at a year later today. And is
So,
it further ahead or better than what you expected or
oh,
not?
much better than what we expected. And, I have to give thanks to God for putting the right people in our lives and for allowing the partnership to exist between myself and Emma, because actually the partner you pick is so important. You have to pick the right partner. You guys have to share some vision. And I think, whilst Emma and I may have a slightly different way of doing things, because we ultimately have a different personality types, um, we share a very similar vision. And so that's important. Emma actually made me do a personality test. I'm not joking. She was like, there's no point partnering up with somebody who does exactly the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Absolutely no point. Because there's no value there. You do
There's no
exact
added value. Yeah.
There's no added value. Yeah, there's no added value because you do the exact same thing, right? So for us, like I do mostly oral surgery, implants, and some restorative work. She does a lot of general dentistry and she handles a lot of like policies, etc., because of her background um, in with the GDC and various other things she does as well. So it's very important to understand who your partner run up with. It's also very important to understand what their challenges are as well. I don't like certain aspects, so she picks up on those. So she picks those up for me, and things that may be of a challenge to her because of family and trying to get that work-life balance. I slip in and take that responsibility. And she like Emma knows this already. Like for me, she's a superwoman because she runs the business, she runs her home life, she runs church. She works yeah, she's doing courses. Like yeah, she's a superwoman. And again, as I said, I feel very lucky to have her, to be honest.
No, 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 it's brilliant. I know some people are often hesitant about partnerships, and I truly believe that it's either one or two ways. Either it works phenomenally well, or
Yeah.
it's horrific. And it's exactly what you said, going through that decision process of making sure that the right person, and you've got all of that in hand, you know exactly where you're going, what you want to achieve. Everything aligns with what you want to do. You know your exit points and how you're going to manage
But
that.
but,
You have the,
Bobs, don't forget though. Remember, you and we've had conversations, right, in the past before this whole practice stuff, and we were talking about, or I was talking about specifically, like you know, it's how important it is to know somebody intimately. Like who are they outside of dentistry? Forget all the social media stuff and the way you want to present yourself and all that fancy stuff. What is the core value of that person?
yeah, who are
And
they behind closed doors?
yeah, exactly. And from that you can determine whether you're able to go into partnership with someone or not. I've had various conversations with different people who would like partnership, and I've had to say to them, I'm sorry, I can't go into partnership with you. We're great friends, but there's certain values which you possess, which I don't share, and vice versa. And there's no right or wrong, but I can see how it will become a source of conflict.
Yeah,
So so yeah, it's
good.
important to the person you get into bed with because that that is basically a marriage.
No, 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 I agree. I'll say for 90% of people, it's probably not the right option to go for.
Yeah,
Because they often don't end up well. But for the 10% that do, it's if you find the right person, fantastic.
yeah.
Crack on. And then the other thing that speaking about when you started the practice, where it's ending at the end of the first year, two things. So number one is in terms of types of treatments. So kind of increasing what you were doing or what wasn't happening in the practice. And second then is financially. So kind of
Okay.
where it was and where you've got to at the end of the year. If you have
So types of treatments we now offer implants, we now offer oral surgery in-house.
And
honestly.
what do the nurses think now after
Oh,
they said
they
that
love
you
it.
we have to do implants within your
They love
practice?
it. They love it. They'll come in on a Saturday, help out. They'll do a late evening, help out for implants and oral surgery. And obviously, I also reward them for that. Because if we're going to do better, it's also important to make sure that we improve the lives of our nurses as well, right? Because otherwise, what's the point? So they absolutely love it. They're very self-motivated now to bring patients in when there's a gap or there's a slot. They're like, oh, I can think of Mrs. So and so. Like, I think you can do the implant on them in that appointment who cancelled, so they're self-motivated. It's brilliant. So we offer very simple implants right down to, complex zygomatic implants. So that's the full spectrum,
That's
right?
crazy considering you had a practice that was doing no oral
Nothing.
surgery, no implant work, and now
Yeah.
you're able to go as complex as zygomatic implants
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
12 months within
Yeah.
that practice on the existing patient base.
Absolutely.
Crazy, crazy.
We offer clear corrector now, so clear aligner systems. And again, it's about so I can do clear aligners and I do it on my family, really close friends, right? But my thing is implants. So Emma takes over that responsibility of doing all the clear aligners. So it's about dividing the I guess not specialty, but the skill sets, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then that keeps her happy as well.
It sounds like you got a
Um,
really complementary skill set. When it comes to,
exactly.
most people have to do that with associates, like myself. I don't like doing all that kind of stuff, clear aligners,
Yeah.
cosmetic stuff. Like yourself, I like doing the implants. But you're lucky you got the partner that can do that within the practice.
Yeah. And you can't. I'm going to say this to your listeners, viewers. We have an amazing associate, and you cannot steal her. Okay, my amazing associate, both associates.
What was her name?
Uh, she would not be named. Her name is Jade. Amazing. She's young, she's hungry. We're all. One of the things we did was like, we're all doing the Chris Hall course together, so we can have a conversation together, and we can go down that journey together. I have very little interest in restorative dentistry, but you know, it's a nice journey so that when I have a conversation with Jade, I know what she's talking about. And she knows what I'm talking about because we're coming from the same perspective viewpoint. Okay. And as I said, like the composite bonding, doing composite on the rubber dam, she loves all of that stuff. So she gets to do that. It's great.
Yeah, yeah, she sounds like a keeper, Deji.
Yeah, no, she is very, 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 very lucky to have her, and yeah, no one's allowed to steal her though. That's why I only said her first name.
No, I'm sure people can Google you and find out where your practice is, okay? I won't mention it now, but I'm sure they can.
So
And then no, that's brilliant. And then what about financially then? So kind of
so
from where you
financially,
began to kind of where you got to now.
we are projected to do over 600,000 for the year in our first year. We've invested in a CT scanner, intraoral scanner. We've invested
What just quickly, what was it prior to that this year?
167.
167.
Mhm.
So you went from 167 to 600K in turnover within 1 year.
Correct.
And obviously, you might not know your profit margin on that yet, depending on your
No,
accounting year.
so we're waiting for the accountant to do that.
Yeah, but
Um,
that's phenomenal. I mean,
yes,
that's pretty incredible.
we
I
got lots.
mean, obviously, a lot of that money, you have to take the numbers with, numbers carefully because obviously 600K revenue, that's total money that you've taken. Obviously, a lot of that gets reinvested back into the practice, which is
Correct.
really common with squats, new practices. We put a lot of cash back into the practices, which hinders our profit margins because we reinvest to grow the business. But in order to, basically, over triple your turnover within 1 year is
Yeah,
pretty
we've been very
incredible either way.
I mean, we've been incredibly lucky, which has meant that we're able to put the money back into the practice. So, for example, there's certain things which we're going to change that is going to cost us 25,000 pounds in February. We have obviously like changed the whole flooring, and actually patients have come in and said, thank goodness you've breathed a fresher breath air into the practice. And that's amazing. It's amazing testimony. They don't need to be referred elsewhere now. Everything can be done in-house. We haven't really started doing marketing yet either, because we just simply don't have the space. So we are looking to build extra surgeries, and it's not cheap. You were looking at about half a million for that. So, you know,
That's because
um,
you've got to do a big extension.
correct. That's because we've got to do a big extension. And the staff need to have a staff room as well. So, yeah,
That speaking, I mean, logistically, you can probably get to 1 million within what you've got, in turnover as it
yeah,
stands before you even do that. The
yeah,
problem comes with capacity. But
exactly.
then it begs the question of, well, then how do we become more efficient?
Yeah.
That actually make that happen within two surgeries.
Well, so one of the ways we can become more efficient is by shortening our appointment times. But the reason why I'm hesitant is because we're a private practice. So we want to give the
Yeah,
patients,
yeah. So that's not the first thing I would normally think of, but the first thing would be number one is looking at extending working hours. So
yeah,
if you can, if you're running, 9 till 5, if you start going 8 to 8 in two surgeries, and you add those hours up, that's a significant increase. That's basically adding a third surgery without having the third surgery in the first place.
correct.
And then the
We,
second thing is then thinking more about workflows within the practice and who's
yeah,
doing what. So making sure that the dentist is only doing the highest value thing that they can be doing, and that
correct,
the team underneath them are so well skilled that they can be doing everything else, scanning, impressions, diagnostics, whatever it is, and that you're
correct.
just doing, I'm just turning up, putting the implant in.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And certainly like that's why, from January onwards, I'm actually going to be working less days in the practice. So I actually have a protected day to work on the business aspects of things. With that, it's a great idea in terms of extending working hours. The issue there is the appetite from staff members, and trying to get them to see the value in that, particularly based on the location and the mindset of of the population of our population. And each population has a slightly different mindset. So in London, that works really well because it's a fast-paced, community. People are used to working late hours, etc. Um, in Suffolk, we call it sleepy. So Suffolk's a little bit more sleepy. Um, it's about trying to find the staff to support that vision, and it's something which we're working on.
Yeah, well, definitely. As long as you know what the options are
Yeah.
and you thought about it, then it doesn't
Mm.
matter. You can build the strategy out and you can implement it slowly, as you go ahead. No, that's fantastic, Deji. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'm just so, so, so happy you guys just took everything on board and this year you just absolutely nailed it.
Oh,
Um,
no.
there's very few practices that can, do that. And then one final question I would just really ask you is for all the viewers, everybody who's listening, when you're starting out on this journey, whether it be a squat or buying a practice, what are your top three tips that you could give to somebody who's about to embark on this path?
Number one, speak to people. There's a whole concept of oh, I'm not going to speak to anyone about my ideas. No, speak to people. You don't know who knows what you need in order to make your dream a reality. Okay? Speak to people. Have a conversation. Um, Number two, do your numbers. It's so important. I declined to buy a practice based on the fact that the numbers just didn't make sense recently. So do your numbers. And number three, it goes back to speaking to people. Mentorship, mentorship, mentorship. Honestly, like Bobby, like the conversations we've had. Sometimes the frustration. that I've had personally with certain aspects of trying to run a business. Um, so thank you. So I would say mentorship. It's key.
Yeah, I think that goes for all aspects, whether it's clinical, non-clinical. It's just understated. It's so much easier to get to where you want to and get there quicker if you
Yeah,
learn from the person who's already done it and been through the same shit and mistakes
yeah,
and
basically.
done all of that for you.
Yeah,
But no matter where you are in life, it's just really, really important to have a really good community and good support network. People around you that help you, push you, get you out of your comfort zone. And when you get stuck in a rut, you got somebody to lean on. That's the
yeah,
biggest thing. It's just knowing like you're not alone. There's so
yeah,
many other people going through the same journey, but don't worry, it's fine. We've got your back. There's other people that are doing it, going through the same problems, and there's always a solution. But you have to ask the question in order to get that in the first place, and don't be
yeah. And
scared to
I
because
think sometimes as well, you don't even know the question. You don't know the right question to ask
yeah,
until you start just having general conversations with people. So reach out to people, honestly, like just obviously when I say reach out to people, I mean like sensible people. Okay. Yeah. Reach out to sensible people and someone you feel safe with. Because there's an element of vulnerability that needs to be that you need to have, right? So absolutely like mentorship, 100%. And be honest with yourself in terms of why you're doing it. And don't focus on the money. I know we're speaking about finances, but don't focus on the money. Focus on the plan and
yeah,
work the plan.
yeah, 100%. Focus on doing the work, the business plan, and actioning it, and the money comes later down the line, without a doubt. Everybody always says it. It's one of those things, don't focus on the money, and it will come in later on. But it does. It honestly does. But you just have to do the hard work in the first place.
Correct.
And then it comes much bigger later on than bigger up front, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Deji. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I'm sure it's really, really valuable to a lot of people out there who are listening. And just one final thing, if people want to reach out to you, find you, and know who you are and connect with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Implants by Deji. Is it Implants by Deji? You can find me on Instagram. Also, you can email me, Dr. Olari, that's spelled Olaore at gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook. And for those who have my number is freely available, so you can just reach out. I'm very easygoing. So yeah.
All right, brilliant. All right, thank you, Deji. And
Nice.
can't wait to see what the next year, 2025, brings for you guys.
Amen. I'm excited. It's about the journey. I'm excited. So yeah, thank you.
So thank you.